So those of you who've followed the Siebel Hub for a few years now will know that there's a tradition whereby I corner George Jacob and get him to reveal all sorts of interesting things about the future of Siebel. And this year, I cast my net a little wider and was incredibly lucky and incredibly honored, it has to be said, to be able to spend time with not just with George, but also with Pritham Shetty, which is a fantastic opportunity for me to, well, ask the questions that I think that a lot of our readers have, and hopefully not fluff those questions and react sensibly when the answers are given. So we are live in Las Vegas. This is Wednesday afternoon. So I'm running on fumes, but these two look like they're fresh as a daisy, so they obviously spent a lot of time in hospitality suites, which I don't get to. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us. I do appreciate that you have other things to do than just sit around and chat to me. So thanks to the both of you for joining. George, this is a record now. I think this is our 10th.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Is that
I think,
paper? What is the
yeah, the 10th anniversary, I think is wood.
Wood.
Not that I'm implying that we're ever going to get married, but Pritham, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
You're going to have to put up with the fact that, we have a sort of running show going on here. But what I'm really interested in is that the pair of you together offer a really broad, and I suspect that some of you you'll have different perspectives on things, but you're obviously living the same reality that the rest of us are. So if you don't mind, we'll start off with a simple question, and then we'll sort of probably head off into uncharted waters. We're all friends here, so you can interrupt me or I can interrupt you. Well, I better not do that actually, but I mean, so clearly, I don't know what that was. Clearly, since we last met, George, and since we were last in Open World, there's been some fairly profound changes to the landscape of applications in general. And I think specifically in the CX world, because CX tends to be at the forefront of a lot of, shall we say, visible technology. What for you are the profound changes you've seen, I would say, in the last year or in the last 18 months that have affected how people think about CX? It could be from a customer perspective. You know, George, you're a customer, no doubt, of Daimler-Benz. Or it could be as a consumer of technology. What are the things that you think have changed CX in the last 18 months? Pritham, the honor goes to you. What's your vision of what's changed in the last 18 months?
Going to the rookie first.
Yeah, that's right. Softening you up. Yeah.
I think from what's changed, just in a general perspective, I think as every one of us are experiencing, is the generative AI. I think the OpenAI experience has sort of opened the eyes for almost everyone that there is a huge possibility from a customer experience perspective that can change everything. So we'll have to rethink everything we have done so far and look at it in a different lens. I think that's the opportunity ahead for CX.
So in a sense, it changes everything.
It changes everything.
George, would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. I think even more than CX, it changes computing. It feels like, and I think there were a few years ago that somebody was announcing the end of cloud and talking about 20-year cycles from mainframes to client server to cloud that coincidentally sort of ended around 2020. And then the prediction was that we were going to decentralization and Internet of Things and stuff. But really what looks like it'll be the next decade or two is that whole world of AI and generative AI and data that up to this point we've been sort of limited in terms of our ability to harness.
When we talk about a huge event such as the arrival of generative AI, and I suppose the arrival of AI in people's consciousness as a whole, and I think Gen AI was probably the tipping point for a lot of people. I can't remember which session I was in yesterday, and someone said, here we go, we're going to have another 8 years of people talking about AI before we actually come up with something that resonates with most people. If I'm getting into generative AI and AI in general right now as a CX consultant, what should I be focusing on? What do you think are going to be the concrete examples? And I know, George, you said to me the other day, you said, well, there are hundreds and hundreds of use cases, but equally, what are the use cases that someone who's in this, in let's say, in Siebel, in a call center environment, what are the use cases that you're hearing about? What are the things that I, as a Siebel proponent, should be focusing on and skilling up to be able to answer the call of generative AI? Let's go, we'll do it the other way around, George.
All right. Yeah, I think there's sort of an assertion, maybe that support service is the place that will be impacted the most.
Yeah.
I think we are certainly, as you probably could tell from yesterday's presentation, are focusing on service, both with Gen AI as well as with integration with other Oracle applications. We see opportunities, especially around knowledge management, things that really haven't been tapped into as much. So I think the approach to take is to look at the highest value. I mean, it's basically an ROI thing. Okay. Where is the highest value, and what do we not already do? There are a whole set of things, use cases, as we talked about, that we already handle. But where are the ones that we don't today? Summarization, analysis of documents, etc. That could make a big difference.
Okay, I'm going to sort of just take that point for a minute and run with it.
Sure.
One of the things that I see, and that I would say we see at the Siebel Hub, is that there's a lot of demonstrations by lots of different people that tend to be very what I would call not point to point, but very service specific. So we'll see a demo of someone obtaining a summary of an SR, or we'll see a demo of someone translating an inbound email. Mm-hmm. And those are all great point solutions in and of themselves. And you can understand that if you're an agent and you're trawling through emails, but they're not essentially radically game changing. The game changing comes, I think, when we have some method to pull that into an orchestrated process, a flow. Mm-hmm. From a Siebel perspective, if I'm looking at all and you talked about in the Product Council, the framework, the AI framework, the second iteration of the AI framework, which is hopefully coming out soon. How does that help people move away from just saying, well, I have a button here that I can click that will give me the categorization of an SR, or the button that I can click that gives me a translation of an email, to here is something that is a logical flow. I'm in my inbound email. It's already categorized it for me. It's already given me the sentiment, and it now knows, or it thinks it knows, what I should be doing next. What are the tools that people are going to use to build out that? I guess I move from a point-to-point service to an at-your-service flow. What are the tools that we can use in Siebel to do that? Is it going to be traditional workflow? Are we waiting for some magic tool to bring that into a flow?
Tools in Siebel?
Yeah, if we look at Siebel specifically.
Yeah, well, I'm inclined to look outside Siebel. So
good.
I think it starts with sort of traditional time and motion studies. Look at where you're spending time. Say in a call center, it could be in a call center, it could be in a sales channel, it could be somewhere completely different. So you start outside. It's an analysis of where you're spending time. You could use something like usage pattern tracking inside Siebel, to help you analyze.
That's kind of where I was going, to discover what people are actually doing, and essentially where are you we're not wasting, but where are you spending too much time on? Okay.
So there's, and I think that's probably, I would say, maybe as step one, that's probably enough. Just figure out where time is being spent. Then you've got to turn around and say, well, there's Gen AI. Help me with that, or something else.
Is it just training that needs to be...
Exactly.
Yeah. And so the way I'll pitch it to you, Pratham, if I may, is that what we're concerned about is, on a general level, is that with the hype, with the AI, the steamroller of AI approaching, is that customers need the kind of framework that you've just described. Is the methodology to approach Gen AI in a CRM is not just, great, well, what services do we have, how many buttons and how many applets can I click? Is how can we as Siebel exponents, but also I guess how can Oracle help customers avoid the trap of what I call irrational exuberance, which is, great, let's put a button here, let's put a button there. What can we do as a community to help customers? What are Oracle question came up yesterday is, will Oracle provide some documentation for, I can't remember what the topic was, or will provide a white paper.
What are the framework?
Yeah, what are Oracle going to do to help avoid people just diving in and creating another applet with another button and bypassing all the real benefits of doing the study that George just described? That's a good question. I'm glad I asked you.
I think where we are still at the early stage. I think where people now understand what they're doing and can we just optimize what we are doing, right? So that's why, I have a bunch of text here, let me summarize it. But I think the key is if you start, as you said, like, hey, if I know what I'm doing, eventually I think generative AI will be probably writing that entire workflow for you. Like, okay, I understand this problem. This is what's the best way to solve this problem, right? I think you have the building blocks in most of our software, like Siebel has all building blocks. Today you put together the workflow. But I think where we'll end up probably is in the long run is like, okay, this is almost personalized for Richard because he has this problem.
Yes, I see. And now we're probably a number of steps away from that now. And Oracle is a product company. I think there's no, that's not a surprise. But I think in this particular once in a generation jump to a capability that things that we just can't imagine to do, that it would have been impossible 10 years ago, that we as a community, and by that I mean Siebel Hub, the consultants, but also Oracle, where we need is to essentially provide a methodology or a thought process, starting with, don't just pick up the bookshelf and say, what services do I have? But the study of what it is we're spending time on is probably the most important thing of all. And I think that if we don't have that, whether it comes from Oracle or the community, my personal fear is that it just becomes another methodology free for all. Everybody does it a different way, and we don't then see the benefits as a whole community. We bypass the benefits and get to, I've implemented a button here and a button there, and that's what I'm very afraid of. So if I can say what we're looking from Oracle is white papers, blogs, community documents to say, well, this is how we think you might like to do it. If I can put it that way.
Yeah, I think so.
You have it on tape. He said he thought it's a good idea.
Yeah.
Maybe just to echo a little bit your concern, I think I don't know whether it's the same concern, but Pritham and I were talking this morning about, I think it was Bill Gates who said, we tend to overestimate what we'll get done in a year and underestimate what we'll get done in 10 years. And generative AI, because of the hardware and what have you, has caught our eye over the last couple of years. But some of the underlying technology has been in place or evolving over 40 or 50 years. And I think sort of the expectation that everything will happen in the next year or 2 years, probably to your concern, leads to, I got to do something about it. Everyone's sort of, opening up the training courses and the books and the what have you. And I think that's this is just another engineering tool. Use Redwood UX, or the search, search paradigm is a different way of doing something that used to take us much longer. So I think I think we've got to just sort of a little bit, and again, just sort of echoing your concerns, step back from it and say, what do we need to do faster, better, more reliably, whatever it is, and then how does this particular thing help in that respect, as opposed to it's going to change.
Do you agree?
Yeah, that's what we were discussing.
Good answer. So I'm just trying to catch you up. It matches. It's interesting. I had a discussion with someone yesterday who is just beginning to work with the Redwood, albeit in a Fusion application, and she said to me, the first 3 weeks of using this application, I really hated it because she was consistently trying to print on it her navigation paradigm from before Redwood. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So looking for this, I said to her, it's like being in Siebel and saying, "Where's the sitemap?" And discovering that it isn't there anymore.
Right.
But she said that, so for her, it was a user adoption challenge. She said, once I got the hang of what how I'm expected to interact with it, she said, I'm much more efficient. Yeah. But I think that customers will have to be aware of that there's a potential to implement something that doesn't actually solve the usage problem or the use case that they have.
Yeah. Case in point, we referred to cars earlier. have a car that tries to tell me when to change, when I'm, it thinks I'm moving out of the lane. And we literally have a fight because I'm trying to change lanes without signaling or whatever.
Remind me never to ask you for a lift, but yeah, no, I have the same issue, and it's called members of my family sitting next to me and say, "Don't change lane." Typically, it's people who are older than me will be telling me how to drive.
Yeah. No, but now the technology is going to be at odds with what a lot of us.
It's exactly the case of a user who struggles with the Redwood interface because they are used to a traditional paradigm.
Yeah.
To both your points, then, that this is a longer journey. That this is not about return on investment, or this is not a 1-year point solution. Sounds like I'm reversing course, but in the shorter term, so the 2024, 2025, what should customers look to be doing in respect of Gen AI or in AI in general? Siebel customers, where should they be? You mentioned, there's been a lot of focus on service scenarios, but is it realistic for a Siebel customer to say, well, I'm going to implement something with the Siebel AI framework by the end of next year? Or should they really be focusing on the bigger picture and thinking, I need to understand exactly how people use my software and where we're wasting time? What should be the focus for customers in the shortish term? Should they be looking to, for example, do a proof of concept? Should they be looking to grab low-hanging fruit if they're already aware that there's something? What's the best way to dip your toe in the water without too much expense, cost, and risk in AI? Let's go to you.
I mean, the first step is to use what we are putting out there.
Yeah.
You get used to what's available, whether it's a Redwood UI or some of the built-in AI capabilities. But that's what's going to spark your imagination and sort of. And since it's such an open framework, you can start to do things that are much more complicated or much more in line with what your business wants. But for that, you need to first understand what you have.
And so it comes back to George's original point: is if you don't analyze how you do it, what you do, then you're essentially, you don't know whether what you're going to optimize is actually worth optimizing.
Yeah.
Same answer for you then?
Well, your question sort of sparked a different thought. I think, and while I'll argue that technology and everything that we've been doing up to this point is, it's a continuum.
Yeah.
There is, I think, to your point on, what should I do differently? And this, again, I'll go back probably 30, 40 years. In the early days of parallel processing, there were a lot of discussions about control flow versus data flow. And control flow essentially said, I can tell the parallel processor what to do, and I can tell 16 of them or whatever the small numbers were in those days. The data flow, people said, there's too much data. I'm just going to do the same operation, and this is the same thing as big data, sort of did the whole MapReduce thing. I'm going to do the same operation in all my data, and then I'm going to figure out based on all of those parallel operations. And clearly, over the last few years, the data flows, that principle has won. So we're at a cusp in terms of thinking about how things should be done. Between they should be coded, we'll get a use case, maybe the highest value use case, etc. We'll figure out what the workflows are, the scripts are, etc. Yeah. And how do we use data that is, and we may not even be using that data today. Like referred to the usage pattern tracking tool that's been in Siebel for probably about close to a decade now. A lot of customers don't even bother it, and there may be performance issues and stuff like that. But I think the paradigm shift is the thing that I would say and it's again to your point, baby steps, dip your toe in, but think about how would I solve this problem with a kind of a data flow approach as opposed to a control flow approach, if that makes sense.
Give a much deeper thought.
Well, yes, this is where he started talking about what happened 40 years ago, and I'm thinking, well, I was actually playing soccer at that point.
I was listening to this podcast called Fail Better, and so all these failures over the years, they all come back to haunt you or to.
That was real blue sky, distant horizon, sunlit uplands discussion.
It comes back to 2020.
Yeah, let's go back to the Siebel-centric world in 2024. Obviously, this last 9-12 months there's been a significant step shift. We've noticed a significant step. First of all, I would say there's much more general communication about Siebel, whether it be on LinkedIn or on your own websites, and there are a multitude of Oracle websites. Two questions really. In that area, is there anything that we can? So, in terms of general communication, is there anything different that's going to happen in the near future? Are we going to see a new, any new websites, any new places where Siebel people can go? Secondly, is obviously, aside from communication, there's been a lot of concrete steps, positive steps around Siebel this year. We've seen significant movement in one industry in particular. I mean, I'm talking now as a person who watches Siebel. We cannot fail to notice that there's been significant investment in Siebel, significant investment in the what we would vulgarly call the telcos of this world. So, can you tell me a little bit about, if someone has just dropped into the conversation and says, well, what's been happening in the last 12 months? What's happened with the product? Where are you going? So this is a big picture stuff. But also, how are you getting that communication out there? What are the tools? As a consultant, where should I be looking to learn more about these exciting new things that I keep hearing about? So I'm going to give honor to Pritham.
Okay. So in terms of communication, yes, we have increased.
It's really ramped up.
Ramped up. And we'll try and do as much as possible to reach as many people.
Yeah.
I don't have anything specific new thing we will be doing, but in general,
more of what you do. That in itself is a win.
And reaching out more to customers, partners, and so forth. So that'll definitely happen, because it's not that we just started working in the last 12 months, or we've been continually building it. But there is a lot of change that happened within Oracle, right? So. A lot of investment around the cloud and tooling and database and so forth. I think we came to an inflection point, which was more of like all of these things actually benefits Siebel quite a bit, and we were able to tap into that, and that actually lines up with some of these industries who are going through the same transformation. So telco was an ideal candidate for Siebel. More, I don't know how many customers we have, lots of customers on telco, and especially tier 1 customers. So we have solved the most complex problem with Siebel in tier 1. So there is no one else who has sort of solved that. Now we have made it easier for them to actually really move to the cloud. Right? So that became a sweet spot for us. And I think there are other industries which Siebel is quite popular, and I think we will continue to sort of look at those industries and see how we can move there.
Okay, so you kind of stole my next question. I'll hold off on my next question. I'll go to George. You got anything to add to that? Or?
A couple of specifics. Thank you for asking the question about communications, because I realize, or we're realizing that there are people. So there's Oracle Cloud Customer Connect, where we have monthly webinars. And we discover, even at events like this with a lot of our marquee customers, that they don't know about that. There's the at least monthly Siebel blog that John runs. There's a similar one that you and Alex...
We shall not name. Well, we're talking only about Oracle stuff now, so...
No, it's an important part of the ecosystem. But for people who are trying to come up to speed with what's happening in Siebel, that the Siebel Hub is definitely an important part. And then there's an info portal that John Bedford is in the process of putting together.
I'd heard that, in a sense, that's what I was getting at. I'd heard noise about a new portal, so I wasn't clear enough. Okay, and what will be the goal of that info portal?
Just to try and pull everything together. The others, the Customer Connect, the blog, even the Siebel Hub things are sort of monthly and I hesitate to call them transactional, but sort of ongoing.
Yeah,
where the info portal is, you come in and you're just coming into the Siebel world.
Right. Okay. So it's a sort of federates a lot of start here in a sense.
Exactly.
Okay. Because yes, it's true that if you drop onto the Siebel Hub on any given day, there's an expectation that the audience already knows what Siebel is and knows why they're there. There's no backstory as to Okay. So there are some interesting
other part to I think the other part of your question, because Pritham I think was very modest here. I think there are actually a lot of things that have changed over the last year with respect to Siebel. And you mentioned, we've been doing this for 10 years, and I think we were taking a sort of linear path.
Mm-hmm.
I think the last 12 months have been non-linear in that respect. I don't know whether you feel that. Certainly at this event, actually,
Certainly, yeah.
and Preetham he's put together various parts. I might almost call it with, in connection with my previous response. It's almost like a data flow. He's looked at what Oracle is doing, what Siebel is doing. He's talked to Siebel customers. He's kind of put all of that together and made, I think, a lot of magic happen.
We talk about it as transformational. It has transformed not just how we think about Siebel, but so customers that we talk to have been affected by what they see as a significant change.
Yeah.
They probably can't pin it down to one thing, but it is their relationship with Siebel as a product is no longer, okay, we're just, as you say, we're following a linear path. Mm-hmm. Something changed. Yeah. And it is, he is obviously very modest. It's down to you.
No, I think it's the work. Team's work.
Yes, because he's on camera.
You unharnessed us.
Yeah, so, this is a tremendous feeling for the community as a whole. We've seen it perhaps more in Europe because we've had also, we these very successful Applications Unlimited roadshows that woke us up about 2 or 3 years ago to the fact that there was a large group of people out there who were raving about Siebel and who really wanted things to happen. And it's almost like what we dreamed of in those meetings has suddenly happened in the last 12 months. Yeah. So this is an exciting inflection point for us. But
team was listening.
Yeah, obviously the walls have ears. When you do a meeting in Oracle, somebody is listening somewhere. So there's big movement, as you said, particularly in the telco industry for a number of reasons. All those customers who are not in the telco industry, who are, whether it be financial services, public sector, whatever it is, and all the other areas where Siebel is strong, are they going to benefit from this unchaining of capability? Some of the things, I'm just wondering, is some of the things that you've been developing for telco, will they drip down into the other platform, the other industries?
I think so. I think everybody is at a different stage of evolution. I think usually telcos being more of a technology company and
they're way out the front.
In the front. And I think there are other industries just to follow. Right? So I think it's inevitable everybody is going to the cloud. The question was previously it was only way to go to cloud was SaaS, but now there are multiple ways to go to SaaS, to the cloud. And I think Siebel will benefit along with the SaaS apps.
So people who today are running Siebel, who are looking enviously at what's happening around TMF and telco, they shouldn't think that it's just going to be telco. There's going to be, okay. I mean, obviously I'm not asking you to give me release dates or anything like that. So, but telco certainly, I mean, it's revolutionized to look at what Siebel is capable of today versus what Siebel is capable of in terms of how the telco solution has been, and I'm struggling to remember the name, Digital Business Experience, DBE, not DEB. I confuse myself there. It's a really compelling package. There's been other telco-focused solutions around Siebel. What makes this one different? And clearly has sparked the market.
I think it is not just about Siebel. I think we have connected the dots across all of the things what Oracle has done.
Yeah.
I think that's where the magic is happening. So Siebel is stable. Siebel is a workhorse. That's what they like about Siebel. But now, can we bring all the other things, whether it's AI, whether it's the database innovations? How do we connect all this and keep that stability, reliability, and that's why it's called telco grade, right?
Yeah.
Creating a telco grade is not easy, right? So if you start today, it takes another 10 years to make it a telco grade.
Yeah. So it's all about taking what people like about Siebel and what it does that it does really well, but also understanding that there are other pieces of the Oracle puzzle, and potentially other pieces of the puzzle, that when you put them all together with, if I could say, Siebel at its heart almost, that's when you have a winning proposition.
That's right.
We almost embedded the phrase "better together" in your head.
You nearly did. You nearly did.
But that is, ultimately, that's what. If you look at what we're doing, and you obviously heard this, the Redwood user experience, the usage of cloud technology, the tapping into, hopefully, AI services or Gen AI services, the composition of Siebel with Oracle Intelligent Advisor, knowledge management.
Thank you for mentioning Oracle Intelligent Advisor. We have a deal that he mentions it at least once every year. You heard it here.
All of those, we have this 5-step,
Yeah.
to nirvana of industry cloud. The first 4 steps benefit everyone. So the 80% of what we're doing, just
That's
to
what it is.
use that. The last step, and there is, give TMF, you mentioned the Telemanagement Forum, credit where it's due. They've pulled together an industry standard and APIs and architecture.
I dream that other industries would do the same, yeah.
Yeah, and in fact, I think they're almost starting to offer to other industries this common framework. So there is that last step, and we see it in some industries, but nowhere near as broad and wide as for the telcos.
Yeah.
But a lot of it applies to any industry. And
Okay, so this is not just telco. This is the
by
first
any
4
means.
of the 5 steps
Yeah.
will apply to anyone. So this is
Sure.
exciting also for customers to hear this,
Yeah.
to think that okay, there's a huge chunk of this path, these 5 steps that applies to me.
yeah.
Yeah, this is
And
really
if
exciting.
you look back in the Siebel history, Siebel Mobile came out of life sciences and consumer goods because those representatives were traveling.
of
They're
course,
all-
yeah.
Even the Siebel remote, the laptop thing,
Yeah.
started out of those industries. Order capture clearly came out of telco, but has been used in a lot of industries. The automotive industry uses the whole asset-based ordering and stuff like that. The customer master came out of the financial services industry. So Siebel is really a composite.
That's
of
a really
industry.
interesting way to put it, is
Yeah.
that all those things that when I think about them as very horizontal solutions. They all came out of different industries,
Yeah.
but then reverted to being considered as horizontal.
Right.
Fantastic. Okay, so I have to end on one of those sort of, let's look forward question. I recall, I can't remember how many years ago it was now, in one of the Siebel User Week, there was a presentation of all the different ways to deploy Siebel. And you, of course, you mentioned Siebel Remote. We had Siebel Handheld. We had Siebel, in those days it would have been the Java Thin Client, and we had the ActiveX Thin Client. There was also, I remember, something called Siebel Voice, which was where Siebel would talk to you and say, you have 3 new opportunities. A little bit like a sort of voice control. Who were you involved in that incident? No?
Incident?
Yeah.
I had not seen that one.
Oh yeah, I've got it.
I'm watching
I also
it.
remember. I seem to recall that someone pulled out a pen, like a fountain pen, that had a little screen on it, and it was sort of like a pager screen, and you could just see the word, new opportunity for XYZ company scrolling
I
by.
don't even remember that.
Yeah, so in next year will we be in Las Vegas? Who knows? I would assume we are.
Actually, they announced the date already.
Oh.
It's October something.
So that the airlines can put their
14th.
prices up already.
There you go.
I appreciate that a year is a long time away. What are you looking forward to in your own professional space and your day-to-day job? What do you think you're going to be raving about in 12 months' time? Will it be more of the same, or will there be, what do you think the world of Siebel is going to produce in the next 12 months? Or if you prefer, we can do the 10 years, because George is usually good at, I'm actually going to replay our interview from 10 years ago and see just how much was correct. I suspect a lot of it was. What do you think we'll be talking about in a year from now? Will it be more Gen AI? Will it be more use cases? Or will there be something else that will come and disrupt us?
I mean, definitely, Gen AI will be talking about. I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing more customers presenting their success stories. I think that's what I am looking forward to.
I think that's a really good point, is that we need the front runners to get out there, do all the hard work for us, maybe, break a few teeth along the way and realize this isn't good, so that we can then... I was really impressed with the fact that here we are in Las Vegas in 2024, is Siebel commands enough of a community to have a very rich set of presentations. There were a very good number of sessions around Siebel. And I'm hoping that next year we'll have the same amount, if not more. And to your point, Pratham, I think, that customers starting to give that, well, we tried this and it didn't work, or we tried this and this was the return. That is a good way of looking at next year. What about 10 years from now? Go on. What do you think we're going to see in 10 years from now? Will we be, flying cars? I saw that on, the Jetsons. Where will we be in 10 years? What will be the game changer in 10 years? We'll put him on the spot now.
I like to take step at a time, but
Yeah.
But I think that, enterprise software is going to be very different in 10 years. I think the way we sort of probably build software is going to be very different. Right? So we are seeing that. Like if you look at Gen AI, it's already changed the way we create content. Coding is nothing but a form of content.
That's true.
And I think it's going to change the way we code.
Alex told me very proudly that he'd got ChatGPT to write him some eScript. So, there we are. Not that I'm suggesting that you build your Siebel platform on top of eScript, but it was quite fascinating to see just how good it was in a very short space of time. So the whole development process will change. The way we create software, the way we, therefore, test software will change, obviously. And I think test automation is a really interesting avenue for where Gen AI is going. Now, George, we're here this time next year. What do you see as the short term and then your 10-year view? What do you think was going to change?
So I think complementary to Preetham's. Preetham is sort of more outward focused. If we have more customers talking about what we do. I think if I look at the last year, there's sort of this, as you said, transformation strategy, strategy shift. I look at it more inwardly, what we have to deliver things in order to make those customers successful. So that's the next year from my point of view. The validation will be, the customers talking about it. So that's, to me, is the next year. And if we're smart, we'll use ChatGPT or whatever, the right Copilot and the right tools. I want to cheat because I can use a ChatGPT like response, which I think I have used on one of the previous videos, which is the prediction.
So here's me thinking it was all original thought, but you actually got it out of a prompt. Okay.
Yeah, there you go. So even that prompt was not original. Someone said that the best way you can predict out that far is looking, 10 years back or 20 years back or whatever. So I'll make a call. I won't stop at 10. Let's go 30.
Okay.
And I doubt that I'll be here for you.
I shall be a brain in a jar of formaldehyde by that stage. But
the fact that Siebel has been, so crucial and instrumental, there's a lot of work to be done between here and there. But I think at least for the 10, I'll come back to that. There's evidence, and we certainly are actively having conversations with customers that go past 5 years. Maybe not all the way out to 10 years right now. But that is so there will be a manifestation of Siebel out there just because we know enterprises are depending on it. What that manifestation will be is probably much closer to the autonomous self-driving car or database.
It really is an extraordinary testament to the software that, obviously there's huge teams behind you, but that you two produce, present, package, design, think. It's a huge testament to the work that you guys do, that we can sit here and talk about a piece of software that dates to the mid-90s and confidently predict, because customers are already broaching the subject, where we'll be in 5 years and 10 years clearly. It really is testament to what Siebel is, what Siebel was at the design when it was designed first, and where you've taken it. Gentlemen,
and not
hats off to you.
Not just us.
Hats off to everybody behind the organization. But it is extraordinary.
Yeah. And over time. I mean, everything that happened the first 5 years and 10 years and 15 have fed into this.
It's extraordinary.
It's pretty cool.
To quote George, it's pretty cool. Gentlemen, it has been an honor. Thank you, Preetham, for lending yourself to this let's call it experience. I'm hoping
not an incident.
I'm hoping that we'll get a chance to do this next year. I hope so, because it has been very interesting hearing two sides of the same story, or two visions of the same thing. And I hope our listeners enjoyed it. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Richard.
Thank you.